Good morning. This is Haley Solomon with the North Carolina Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning for our housing call. And without further ado, I will turn it over to our Executive Director, Samuel Gunter.
Good morning, everyone. I hope you are having a wonderful day so far. It's gorgeous outside, and we are going to jump right in. Obviously, I'm going to take a significant portion of the front end of this call to talk about updates from Hurricane Helene. Still working on the pronunciation. We'll get a little bit of more broad housing updates toward the end and some North Carolina housing news, but we're going to start with what's going on out west and some of the things that you need to know. Misinformation is swirling like crazy out west about the response, what FEMA does and does not offer, how resources are flowing, are they flowing? There is a lot of misinformation to wade through, and so I want to take some time, especially for those of you who are either in the West right now or have friends, family, colleagues out there, to be able to get clear and concise communication as we have been calling through all of the folks in our database who have a zip code out west and hearing what they're hearing on the ground. Even the folks who do this work professionally have a lot of confusion that is being exacerbated by the challenges with the topography and the roads being closed, so it's hard to get to a lot of folks, as well as the down cell coverage and the spotty cell coverage means people are getting intermittent access to information, and rumors are flying all over the place. So, top line, we've been saying this from the beginning, the top line is everybody needs to and qualifies for, but needs to sign up for FEMA's individual assistance. You can do this on their website, or you can call 1-800-621-3362. All of the subsequent recovery interventions that come down the road flow through FEMA individual assistance. Sign up. Like many things, it can be a little bit of a challenge or confusing, especially as you may get a denial for one thing but get an acceptance for another thing. But it is vitally important that everyone sign up for FEMA individual assistance. There are a couple of some tips that our friends over at the North Carolina Inclusive Disaster Recovery Network have been putting out there for as you are registering for individual assistance. One of the questions they're going to ask you is, do you have emergency needs? This means during your evacuations and staying at home, do you need help with gas, medication, food, on and on, shelter, durable medical equipment, anything, right? If the answer is true and so you say yes, that's the $750, right, that has been talked about, that basically everyone qualifies for. When asked if your home is or was accessible, answer no. If there was debris, tree branches, continued flooding, loss of power, damage, destruction, anything that prevented you from staying in your home immediately after Helene, this question is asking whether you can stay and will at your home or apartment, this is for homeowners and renters, and will trigger the ability for you to receive assistance to pay for hotels or provide funding to use while you stay with family or friends, right? So again, when asked if your home is or was accessible, answer no. If there was at any point prevention for you to be able to stay there after Helene. When asked if utilities are out, say yes, even if utilities were out only for a few days. This triggers assistance money to stay somewhere other than your home or to buy fuel for a power generator. Right? When asked, are you willing to relocate, say yes if you cannot live in your home due to damage or loss of power. This question means that you are willing to stay in a hotel or apartment temporarily. That's key, temporarily, and this triggers funding for you. It is not asking if you are willing to move away from your home permanently. This is a temporary question and triggers housing assistance money. If you bought or buy a generator, FEMA is going to reimburse you up to $629, but you have to submit a receipt. If you bought a chainsaw, FEMA will reimburse you up to $219. Again, you've got to provide the receipt. That's the other thing. Taking pictures and saving receipts. Keep everything. obviously, we are still in active rescue mode. It is still difficult to get to folks. I was just on the phone this morning with our former board chair who lives out by the airport now, and it is constant helicopters coming and going, getting resources to folks that are cut off, still trying to locate people that are missing. We are still in active rescue mode, and communication is spotty, right? We've been hearing this from everyone we've talked to, that there's misinformation and there's also just lack of information out there, right? So again, sign up for individual assistance. You can do that on FEMA's website or by calling 1-800-621-3362 and get access to the resources that can help keep you afloat while we're figuring out what long-term recovery is going to look like. But please get that message loud and clear. Everything flows through FEMA individual assistance. So get the number associated with signing up. There's a lot more to talk through on that. Again, on the misinformation front, due to the incredible volume of misinformation that's swirling online and in person, FEMA National has put together a rumor response page, and the North Carolina Emergency Management has also set up its own as well. This provides context to some of the most insidious rumors that are circulating online, to FEMA seizing property all the way to the only resource out there is $750 for folks, right? These are responses so that if you're hearing something that doesn't sound right, check your sources, y'all. There's a page out there to help dispel some of these rumors, to help with information flow and making sure that people who need it are actually getting the resources they need. This is incredibly critical for folks on the ground. There is a database that we're also compiling on our website. We'll have a link to it in the call notes. Resources to support recovery. This is not only the federal resources, but as we are made aware more and more of everything from HUD allowing for flexibility on deadlines for certain programs, to these foundations are taking donations and pushing out support too, right? We're trying to compile a bunch of it on our website in one place. There's also a way for you to submit something that isn't on there if you are aware of a resource out there for folks impacted by the hurricane. Submit it through that portal on our website. Again, the link is going to be in the call notes, and we can get it up there. For renters, there is a lot of confusion right now about renters' rights in the aftermath of disaster. In particular, what recovery resources are going to look like. I'm going to immediately refer you to Pisgah Legal Services. You can get in touch with them at their email address online at pisgahlegal.org, or you can call 828-253-0406. The Pisgah team, they obviously being out west, were incredibly impacted by the storm, but they have now accounted for all their folks, and they were back up and running yesterday on our getting their calls routed back through their network again. So they are also being supported by attorneys from out of state. This is due to an administrative order that was issued by the North Carolina Supreme Court that permits attorneys licensed in other states to temporarily register with North Carolina State Bar to provide pro bono legal services to those impacted by the storm. There is also advocacy happening around an eviction moratorium at the moment, now that some of the courts in the West are reopening today. We're going to update you as we hear more. Obviously, for those of you who are renting out west, there can be no legal evictions if the court system is not up and running, right? So folks are trying to kick you out. It's going to be, they're up to this point, there was no legal mechanism for that. We're trying to figure out how best to help renters navigate, especially those who are in apartments that do not have access to water right now, especially as some of the water systems, it's going to be weak before we get some of the water up and online. But again, for renters out there, 828-253-0406, that is Pisgah Legal's number. They can help walk you through what your rights are in this moment and how best to navigate FEMA individual assistance and all the other programs as well. So those are some of the resources I want to point you to. There is also a national hotline called the Disaster Distress Helpline. This is the first national hotline dedicated to providing year-round disaster crisis counseling. So it's toll-free, multilingual crisis support available 24/7 to folks experiencing emotional distress related to natural or human-caused disasters. You can call or text 1-800-985-5990. Again, this is a 24/7 crisis support line for folks in disaster areas experiencing emotional distress. The last thing that I want to note, from the news coming out of the West right now is, in addition to the administrative order from the North Carolina Supreme Court allowing out-of-state attorneys to temporarily register with the North Carolina State Bar to assist folks pro bono in disaster-impacted areas. We got a number of systems that are making modifications. One of the critical ones is the North Carolina State Board of Elections. So this is a bipartisan state board that on Monday unanimously approved a long list of emergency measures to help Helene victims vote in the 2024 election and ensure election officials can provide accessible, safe, and secure voting options for residents in Western North Carolina. I think it's critical to note that this was a unanimous bipartisan decision, and you can read more about what accommodations are being made. But we've got an election that starts in North Carolina on the 17th. Early voting begins. So this is going to be critical, especially for folks who are displaced, who are not actually living where they are registered to vote. What accommodations are going to be made to make sure that we are able to run an election in this state. So that is, I think, the bulk of what I want to talk through in terms of what's impacting the West right now. We should be seeing legislation out of the North Carolina General Assembly this week, preliminary legislation for some emergency needs. We're hoping to see what's in that bill later today, and we'll push out updates on that. We will also be seeing further legislation in the coming 2-3 weeks as we know more of what needs to be adjusted to make sure resources and systems are flowing as they should or as they are able, given just the level of devastation. What's happening with the school system, what's happening with on and on and on, right? There's a lot of questions about how our local and state systems are going to operate in the interim while we're trying to get everything back online as they should be. And for a lot of areas, that's going to be a months and years long process. So as we know more, we'll let you in on that. Those are the Helene updates. There's a couple of other things that are going to be, when I get to the federal updates, that are going to touch on Helene, but that's kind of our big, again, top line. Tell folks to sign up for FEMA individual assistance. Everything flows through that. And if you are encountering challenges, Pisgah Legal's number is the one to call, 828-253-0406. All right. Taking a breath, taking the pause, because we're moving on to some broader affordable housing updates. But before we get to that, we have an update from the North Carolina Housing Coalition. And that is, we are looking for an events and outreach coordinator. So there is a job posting open on our website at the moment. If you want to join us in our mission to ensure that every North Carolinian has a home in which to live with dignity and opportunity, check it out. We run a number of events. We've got 2 big conferences a year. We are hosting a legislative day at the General Assembly, a number of other webinars, in-person convenings, and so on, that we are looking for support on. So if that sounds like a job that you are interested in, please check out the posting on our website. We'd love for you to come and work with us. Moving on to federal updates. Congress is in recess right now ahead of the election, and the stopgap spending bill passed last week extends FEMA's current funding levels of $20 billion, which leaders are saying should be enough in the short term to respond to the impacts of Hurricane Helene. But we've got another massive hurricane barreling down on Florida, which is near and dear to my heart. Most of my maternal side of my family is all on the Gulf side. So we're, in touch with family members as they're about to get hit by a second storm in just a couple of weeks. So there's going to be some need for a look at our funding levels around disaster recovery, as well as long-term CDBG disaster recovery allocations, as well as FEMA funding, and so on. HUD has announced new actions to improve its handbook for the management of multifamily affordable homes. You can find that link on our website. On the state and local side, there are a number of updates from around the state. New Hanover Community Endowment has announced its first affordable housing investment strategy grants, which is exciting news. We've been in conversation with them over the past couple of months about what their affordable housing strategy looks like. So it's exciting to see that come out. There's a piece on Charlotte NPR about admitted pressure to retain teachers, new affordable housing reserved for CMS educators. Durham Tech is securing major federal funding for affordable student housing project on chapelboro.com. You can also read about Wake County has named its new affordable housing affordability director. So this is Morgan. Many of you know her. We're really excited to see her in this new role. So congratulations to Morgan. New York Times has a piece on hundreds of storm-ravaged roads and no timeline for fixing them. And there's also a piece in the multi-housing news on Research Triangle gets a trio of new affordable housing communities. So there's a couple of little state and local updates from around North Carolina. Moving on to events happening, Our State, Our Homes, partnering to address housing needs in North Carolina, that has an applicant information session tomorrow at noon. There is a link to register in the call notes. National Fair Housing Alliance is also conducting a webinar on tomorrow as well from 2 to 3:15 on engaging communities to advance health and housing equity. The Joint Center for Housing Studies at Harvard has a webinar coming up on the 11th called Creating Effective, Comprehensive, and Accessible Home Repair Programs. For any of you engaged in that, I think that would be it's going to be a really interesting webinar to be a part of. Also want to note that the American Planning Association North Carolina's fall conference is coming up in Greenville, North Carolina from the 16th to the 18th, for those of you who are interested in attending there. Last thing on here is Hope North Carolina 2024 Inclusive Housing Summit is coming up on November 4th. It's going to be from 8 to 4 p.m. at the Friday Center in Chapel Hill. Registration is $50 for an individual, $100 for a professional. And then lastly, there are some reports and resources that may be worth checking out. Joint Center for Housing Studies has an article on how nonprofits are using accessory dwelling units as an affordable housing strategy. They also have a piece out on meeting the needs of America's older adults. Could state-level plans better inform planning at the federal level? USICH has a piece on ending homelessness before it starts, a federal homelessness prevention framework. And there are a couple of others here, including a piece from HUD on unlocking surplus public land for affordable housing, lessons from philanthropy, which I think for those of you on this call who are part of philanthropic networks and thinking about how you come alongside public partners, this is an excellent piece to check out. There's a couple of other items that you may want to look out, but we are at time, and I want to let you go about your day. Again, for those of you connected to folks out west, please communicate clearly. There are resources available. There are housing resources available. All of it flows through FEMA individual assistance. I know there's a lot of folks out there with providing donations, providing help, but I need all of the folks in the housing space to be communicating clearly and loudly to sign up for FEMA individual assistance. All the recovery flows through that. And if you have trouble with the process, reach out to Pisgah Legal. They are there to help. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for the work that you do. If you are out west right now, our hearts are with you. Please be in touch with us if there is any way that we can be helpful. We will see you next time.